We can do anything we want. I started recording, so I'm gonna crack another beer.
All right. Well, be ready for one in about a third left, so I'll be ready for one soon.
But yeah, I haven't been over to Chub in, like I said, like 20 years. So when you were posting up those photos the other day, and the marina was full and it looked finished and everything, I was floored. I wasn't expecting all that.
I'll tell you what, we've been going for the last, I've personally been going for the last 4 or 5 years, 3 or 4 times a year, and we've watched the development of the island basically from when the clubhouse was just started and they started building villas and houses and things like that, and you know, when they finished the clubhouse to building more houses to building finishing the pool and expanding the marina. They have done so much development and put so much money in that island, and as they've done more and more and they've tried to market it, there's been more boats coming over. And this year, I think, was really the
Kind of like the Premier Open.
Yeah, well, not necessarily, but it really showed. I think it was the great example of what they had done and how people are starting to figure out that this place now is back. Like, Chub is back. It's new. It's happening. It's great. It's well developed. The internet works really well. There's LTE on the island, believe it or not. I mean, the infrastructure on the island is awesome, and it happens to be one of the best fishing spots in the Bahamas when the conditions are right. So it really showed that how many boats were there, and we had Mikey Finney Guerrero with us, and Mikey had his drone flying around, and we took great drone video of the island and of the marina, and it was just amazing. There had to have been $200 million of sport fishing boats in that marina. It was something else.
You guys are listening to the Real Guy Podcast. I got Mike Lambrects in here with me tonight. He just got fresh off a Chub Cay trip, so we're excited to hear about that. He's also the Broward County president or chapter president for the CCA and the ex-president of the Sail Club that we've talked about so much on this podcast. Mike, thanks for being here and welcome to the Real Guy Podcast.
Hey, thanks for having me. Excited to be here.
So Mikey was hanging out with you over in Chub this week?
Yeah, it's funny. We generally go over with 3 people to help run this boat. It's a 52 Viking called the Double Eagle, and we only had 2 guys. And generally, you know, the captain, he's real careful about who he brings. You know, you want to have the right people with you. You got to have a real guy with you, right? So, you know, you gotta have the right personality. You got to be the right fit. Otherwise, you're not gonna have a good time. So I thought Mikey would be a great fit to help us bring the boat over, and we drag a 23 Stewart boat with us behind the Viking as a.
So Mikey was a good choice.
Mikey was a great choice. We had a great time, and you know, and Mikey's a good fisherman, and he's just a great help, and that's what you need on a trip like that. Is you need somebody that's willing to work hard and somebody that knows how to fish.
Well, Mikey Finneguera, I don't know if you realize it or not, but when I first met Mike, I think he was just starting to work for Peter Miller and the Bass to Billfish show. I mean, he was dead green.
That's when he had short hair, I think, right?
Right, he had short hair. He was super young. He was fresh out of University of Connecticut. So he gets on the boat and you know, good attitude, smile and everything. And then I find out the kid's from Connecticut. So I immediately nicknamed him Yukon. And I've been calling him Yukon ever since. And super nice kid. And worked real hard when he was doing the Bass to Billfish production. So I think it's kind of cool that like 10 years later, and you're rolling around the Bahamas with the guy, and he's one of your go-tos.
I'll tell you, one of the most annoying things about Mikey, and I think Mikey will appreciate this, is I think the entire day I was spraying off the deck lots of long brown hairs, and I'm like, well, I know there's no women on this boat.
So you were cleaning up Mikey's hair.
I was cleaning Mikey's hair everywhere. I felt like we had to have somebody's girlfriend must have been on board. So I told Mikey, we got to get this hair short again. We got to cut this hair. I can't be cleaning this stuff all over the boat. We're gonna find it in the gutters and the deck hatches and all sorts of things for weeks after this trip. So we've got to get that fixed.
Yeah, well, coming from you, Mr. Clean Cut and everything. I don't know how he's gonna take it. You know, when I first did that stuff with Mikey, he looked a lot like you now, but then. And now he looks a lot more like me now than then. So I'd like to think that I took a little bit of credit for all that hair that he's got.
It has to be, and I know he respects your work and respects what you do, and maybe I think you're somewhat of a role model for him.
So he quit shaving and quit cutting his hair. That's when you know you've made an impact.
Yeah, he's definitely become a real guy as far as if we're going to talk about hair, but. But no, he's a great guy. He's become a good friend of mine, and the work he does is incredible. For those that don't know about Mikey, I mean, we mentioned Bass to Billfish. He was filming and producing that show, and he's done Discover Water TV on the Discovery Channel. He's done a number of other shows, and he's working on even more shows. He's doing a lot of shoots with boat manufacturers and whatnot. The guy gets to travel all over the world. He's doing stuff with Captain Jimmy Nelson. If you've seen Captain Jimmy Nelson's show on TV, he's filming those shows with Louisa. And so in general, he's a busy guy, but he's just a good guy to have around, and we look forward to having him fish with us more.
Right. Last time I saw him, I was at that CCA thing that he had down here at the brewery. What's that? I guess that's Fort Lauderdale, right?
Yeah.
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 And I got to hang out with him a little bit, but that's the last time I seen him. Last year he was out there tarpon fishing quite a bit, and I'd see him out there when I was working.
Yep.
But
he took me once, and we struck out horribly. We saw fish all over the Sounder, and we were fishing down in Miami off Cape Florida, and he said, "Oh, I know Jeff's been fishing down here every now and then." I said, "Well, just because Jeff's fishing down here doesn't mean that we're going to get one tonight, Jeff's got this dialed in, He also fishes and with Captain Russell down there, and Russell's got his stuff dialed in as well. So
yeah, Russell's got his stuff dialed in. All right. He was hitting it hard last year, but he's a crab and shrimp fisherman. I was trying to turn him on some other stuff.
Yeah, but he's a down east guy. He's definitely a Yankee, no doubt about it.
Yeah, it's funny because I met Mike when he was fresh into the fishing industry, and I remember the first time meeting you. I forget how old you were. You were awfully young, but had to have been 10-12 years ago.
Young enough to land you on To Catch a Predator if you didn't play your cards right, And that's actually a funny story. I have a buddy of mine. A lot of people. This guy drives a lot of people crazy. Ernie Martinez, and for those of you that are on Facebook and that know a little bit about fishing down here, he owns Bost Lures, BOST, and he also works for Bob Hughes Boats. And good guy, he'll get on your nerves all day long. But he was one of the first people that I met when I first started fishing. I had to have been 12. I was lucky enough to have a 32 whaler at the time.
Right.
We're living on the water at the boat behind the house, and that's kind of when I figured out about where you kept your boat, Jeff, on the same canal, and we've got our own stories about that too. But we'll get to that story. That may not be a bad one either to tell. But
yeah, definitely talk about that.
Yeah. So it was funny, when I was so young, I was, it sounds weird, but meeting fishermen and guys I was fishing with on the forum, the Florida Sportsman Fishing Forum.
Right.
And these guys, I'd have them come to my house early in the morning, and my sister and my mom, who I lived with at the time, they'd watch these guys load, all these coolers on the boat. What's in the coolers? These half of them are beer coolers. These guys are loading on the boat. I'm 12 years old. I wouldn't know what a sip of alcohol was if it splashed me in the face. And so Ernie always described it to me as he felt like when he was walking into the backyard, he goes, "Oh, hey, I'm Ernie," and then my response was, "Hey, I'm Mike," and that was my voice. I hadn't quite got deep yet, and he goes, "The next thing I was looking for was Chris Hansen to come around the side of the house with a camera crew, say you're on To Catch a Predator, and to tell me to sit down and to start having conversations with me." But
what was the name of those swordfish tournaments you used to run?
I ran it with a guy named Andy. He was a Lauderdale swordfish tournament, and the other names are escaping me now. But that was an interesting time. I think I was 16 years old when I was helping this guy run these tournaments, and that was my first real endeavor into starting to do things. Our competition was Drew Kettlehut, who ran the Hydroglow tournaments, and Drew's done a really nice job with that over the years. I think I saw he might be having another one, or he might be getting back into it. But
have they been doing sword tournaments?
They have, yeah. They did. They've been doing the daytime ones. They have one I think it's called the Sunburn.
That makes sense.
They got a daytime tournament, and I think they might have brought back a night tournament. But it's interesting what they're doing with the night tournament is I think, and correct me if I'm wrong, but they are doing like a monthly or a bi-monthly tournament where you can choose the days that you go out on, and then it's basically you're just weighing fish in from a handful of different nights instead of having it all on the same night. So it's a little bit more flexible.
Yeah.
But running those tournaments was a lot of fun. It was a heck of a learning experience, and there was a way more drama than I'd ever thought.
Dude, what a crowd for the swordfish tournaments.
The drama was, you never expect, 30 to 40, 50, 60-year-old men to carry themselves and create the amount of drama that these guys did. They were really good at it. Really good at it.
Oh my God. I had just finished rebuilding that old Bertram I had.
Oh yeah.
Right, when you guys were doing those tournaments. And Turtle and I forget how many we entered, maybe a half a dozen or so. But that was like the conversation that we'd have all night while we were fishing. Like, what drama? What the hell's going to happen this week or during this tournament? I mean, it was always something.
And we knew Turtle, anybody that knows Turtle, we knew that guy avoided the drama like the plague.
Right.
We'd love to talk about it, but he was always on the outside looking in when it came to the drama. And but man, what a fisherman he is! That's a whole other conversation about that guy. What a fisherman and a hunter he's become, and just a good guy in general. But those swordfish tournaments, I'll tell you, I remember a story. I remember one instance where at the weigh scales, I think this scale was at 15th Street Marina,
right,
or 15th Street Fishery, or I'm sorry, 15th Street Ramp. And if I'm not mistaken, we had a couple of weigh stations in this tournament. But at this particular weigh station, I wasn't at this station, but I heard this story, which was amazing. And this story was famous for years in the sword fishing tournament community. But there was a team that strung up a fish on the scales and weighed the fish in, and almost right away there was gallons of water that just came out of just gushed out of the fish.
What do you mean gushed out of the fish?
Just right out of the mouth. Just water just literally just gushing out of the mouth of this fish in spurts, just like pockets of water just coming out of this fish.
Right.
Nobody's ever seen this before. A lot of these guys are seasoned, swordfish vets and billfish tournament guys that have, strung up and weighed dozens, if not hundreds of billfish before, and never seen something like this before. They've seen the weights, people stuffing fish with weights. They've seen all sorts of different things, but they've never seen a fish gush water like this one quite did. So, and the fish would apparently, they let the fish hang there for like an hour, and every so often, 15 minutes, 20 minutes, the fish would just let out another belch of water. And there must have been gallons of water that came out of this thing, and nobody really understands how they did it or what they did. But ever since then, there was a joke about stuffing a washdown hose in the mouth and other cavities of the swordfish, and trying to fill the fish up with water. We tried it ourselves. We caught a fish and said, let's test this ourselves. And it didn't quite work out. So we're not sure what happened or how it happened, but that was a controversial night. So
you're not positive how all the water got inside the fish.
I didn't catch it.
But how many pounds do you think they were able to...
I've heard anything between 20
pounds
of
water came out of the fish.
Yeah, so who knows? Maybe they stuffed it with ice, and they, I don't know. Maybe they thought they'd get a quick weigh out of it and a little gush of water, and nobody would really notice. But or for whatever reason, they, if the fish was somehow left in a fish box full of water, I don't know. It just there was a lot of skepticism around this fish.
And how many years did those swordfish tournaments last? I mean, I remember doing them for 3 years there. It got really hot.
Yeah.
And a lot of participation, some decent money to be made.
Yep.
And I don't know, we came in first in one and maybe second or third in a couple others. But what was how long did those things go for?
I mean, they didn't really last that long. The ones that had the tenure were Drew's tournaments. Drew had his tournaments for a long time. I couldn't tell you how long, but a lot longer than the ones that we were throwing. We would last a couple of years per tournament, and then figure out that all of the drama and the nonsense and everything at the end of the day wasn't worth it. The money wasn't there. It was just it's a tough crowd. It's a tough crowd.
So you were getting smarter during that time.
Basically, yeah. The experience made us smarter, and we ended up deciding that we had other things that we feel like would benefit our time more than dealing with
the swordfish crowd,
with the nonsense that those guys had. Yeah.
No, see, that's when So it was the sword tournaments, and then I didn't hear or see you or anything for, I don't know, maybe call it 5 or 6 years. And then I started going to the sail club meetings because you were involved in that, and I was like, oh, I remember that kid. That kid's got something on the ball. He's always doing something. So I started going to those sail club meetings. But between the time the tournament started and we started hanging out at the sail club, like, what happened to you? What were you doing in there?
Let me crack a beer here. This is actually really appropriate. I'm going to crack this beer because during this time that I disappeared, I don't know if a lot of people knew, but I was seeking an education because I wasn't really all that interested in throwing fishing tournaments for a living. Right. So I went to Florida State University. I'm a Seminole, and didn't really do a whole lot of fishing during that time. I had my mind on a lot of other things that most of us can imagine what those may be.
Things that college kids have.
College kids have on their mind, right? Like studying and making sure we were going to the library and
yeah, I'm sure
getting to class, and all the things that really matter, and the life lessons that come along with it. So
I didn't realize you were a Knoll.
Yeah.
I won't hold it against you.
Oh no, it's I don't know how anybody could hold it against me.
Well, there's a lot of people down here in the 305.
Yeah,
that aren't really into the Knolls that much.
It's been a great rivalry, and we've got a good rivalry with our in-state with the other in-state teams, and it's been a fun. It was definitely a fun time in college.
It was way funner when all the teams didn't stink, though.
Yeah, it was. There was, it always seems to cycle. Like, back when I was going to school, Florida State was awful. Last year's of Bobby Bowden and Jimbo Fisher was just getting started when I graduated, and then Miami would whoop us a little bit. Florida was real good during that time, and they won a national championship during my time there, and so then things changed around quite a bit. Of course, conveniently, once I leave, we come in with Jameis Winston and throwing balls all over the field and win a national championship. And, and then that was when Miami and UF were down, and now Miami's coming back up, and UF has come back up.
Dude, they all stink now. I
think this year's going to be good. I think this year's going to be better collectively for the state,
Good's relative. If you guys beat Miami, then you're like, okay, things were good. You go 6-5 and beat Miami. And then Miami would probably go like 6-5, and then Florida probably go like 6-5, and they all stink. And now, if any of the teams from Florida make it to a bowl game, I pull for them. So I've been pulling for UCF lately, and South Florida, and it's just kind of disheartening, the whole goddamn thing.
I think it's the team's got to get on the right cycle together. Florida was up when FSU and Miami were down, and I don't want to rag on Miami guys here, but Miami's been down for probably the longest time of the three schools. From year over year.
I think the other universities, it's kind of like snook poaching. They come down here and they dip into our athletes, and then they go off to these different places, like, every place else but here.
Yep.
And it's kind of like poaching, and now we stink, and they're all much better, and I don't get it.
Well, it's like going to your favorite tarpon or snook spot, you know what I mean, or going to the jetties when all the snook are stacked up there, and everybody wants to go and grab everything.
And then the goddamn poachers show up. That's what I'm talking about.
Poachers show up, snook disappear, they get spooked, and
then if you're from Florida, like, you don't really where are you going to go to recruit? Everybody's here.
And they want to stay here. A lot of these guys, they don't want to go away. They're from Miami. They got their homes there. They're good to, they got their family, their school, their friends, everything. So,
see, FSU and Miami has an excuse because, especially Miami has an excuse because they don't have the cash, that some of these other universities have. And I honestly think the going rate for like a, Division I 5-star recruit, I'll call it $50,000 a year.
Well, it depends on how much benefits they're getting from whoever in the school, right?
It's $50,000 a year. You want to get that superstar?
Shoes and scooters, I know.
Cars.
I saw every player in Florida State when I was there. They were all riding around on scooters, and I'm like, that's just interesting. I don't know if that came with their tuition or if that was allowed, but there were other guys that were rolling around in really nice cars. I'm like, I don't know where that came from either.
See, the guys from FSU were getting scooters, and the guys at Alabama were getting like
Chargers.
Well, at least their parents or whatever getting like Corvettes and stuff. So yeah, you got to step up the game, I guess, here in Florida.
Oh, Alabama's got a lot of money as a school. You know, they have.
But what's Florida's excuse? Spend some of that cash. Those University of Florida's got the cash.
The SEC programs have a lot of cash. You know, the ACC's broke compared to the SEC, so
they might as well give it to some of the players.
They might as well. Might as well. You know, that would be good.
Everybody else is doing it.
Yeah, exactly. So
anyway, what'd you guys get in Chub last week?
Well, we were talking about this earlier, Jeff. You know, the weather pattern has to be right in that part of the islands for the fishing to be really, really good. And this time of the year, generally, the weather starts to shift the wind starts to shift out of the southeast, and it blows consistently from the southeast. That's our springtime here in South Florida. Is you get a real strong wind out of the east or southeast, and that's real good for that area. But the issue is that down here, and it's not necessarily an issue for most people, but we still have fronts coming through. You know, it's raining right now outside. You've got, you know, wind coming out of the west and coming out of the north soon, and that weather pattern, when it changes and it doesn't stay consistent, does not allow for the wind to push enough fish into this area where Chub Cay is in the Berry Islands in the Bahamas. And I think that's kind of what we faced, was just inconsistent weather pattern and just not enough southeast wind to push fish into what they call this area called the pocket in Chub. And if you think about it, if you think about the pocket of your shorts, I mean, it's like a little pocket where basically there's a direct line from the eastern Bahamas all the way to this pocket where the water comes up real steeply onto the Bahama bank, and there's a real nice defined edge there, and the fish get stacked up there on the right wind. The big dolphin, 20, 30 plus pounds. You catch 20, 30 of them in a day, and you'll be running away from them trying to catch a blue. You got lots of billfish, sailfish, blue marlin, white marlin. So, you know, you'll have a stray tuna every now and then. And, you know, so we didn't really have those conditions to benefit us this trip. So we picked away at some smaller dolphin. The weeds, I don't know if you've seen a sargassum weed being as bad as it's been the last year or two. And I remember a couple years ago we were wondering where the hell is the sargassum weed?
The weed last year and this year is just
phenomenal. And that was a big problem too. You know, that was a big problem too, is trying to fish around that stuff. And there was no fishing around it. You were fishing through it the entire time. It was just everywhere. So, you know, thankfully we rigged, you know, our ballyhoo, our skipping ballyhoos. We rig off, you know, we run off the riggers and
rig them weedless. Did you rig them weedless George showed you the other night?
We didn't rig them like George, but I was amazed how weedless they stayed. The only baits that we really had problems with were the baits that we ran off the flats, and that we had release clips down on the rub rail area of the boat. So the ones that were staying a little deeper were the ones that are catching the weeds, but the skipping ballyhoos with the skirts and islanders and other alien heads and things like that we were using didn't really catch that much weed. I was really surprised, but props to George Poveromo for coming in and showing us how to rig a truly weedless ballyhoo. I mean, that would have really, really been the trick for this trip.
I wasn't sure what I was more impressed with when George spoke at the Sail Club the other night. I didn't know if I was more impressed with the weedless ballyhoo rig or how much more Italian George was than Busacca. You do realize
I did feel like there was a little bit of an ego standoff there from the I don't know, what do you call it, Italianism of these two guys. It was George felt like we stepped on his toes a little bit there with the Italian thing.
I think George naturally sports being Italian.
Mm-hmm.
You know, he's got blue eyes and everything, but he's got the vowel at the end of the name. But I think Busacca is more proud of being Italian than George.
Oh yeah, no doubt.
Or at least boastful about it or whatever.
Yeah.
So I think it was Busacca's point to make sure that George knew that he was more Italian than him. And I don't think George was buying it.
Well, it's funny. I mean, if you're going to put Busacca next to George, I mean, what else does Busacca have on George Poveromo other than maybe being more Italian? So Busacca's got to do something to kind of size up to George, if you think about it.
Well, yeah, and I'd much rather Busacca be worried about how Italian George is than worried about George's sheepshead spots. Because,
what is up with that guy and his sheep? I don't understand. What is up with that guy and his sheepshead spots? I mean, is it that big of a thing? Are they that good eating? Or what's his deal?
No, you see, you grew up with a big boat and, living on the intercoastal and going to the Bahamas and getting out in the ocean and everything.
Yeah, that's fair.
Busacca, he's been going down to Dania Pier and Dania Beach and fishing the seawalls and stuff. So he's got snook and jacks on the beach sometimes and then sheepshead. So...
man's got to eat, right?
The man's got to eat.
Yeah.
The one of the funniest things I experienced in a long time was when you had Brian Sanders at the Sail Club.
Yeah.
And we brought Busaka down there. And Busaka was not letting Brian Sanders talk about sheepshead. And this went on and on and on. I'm telling you, Busaka had Sanders for 30 minutes talking about sheepshead. I almost fell over.
I'll tell you, so it must have been that meeting, but ever since that meeting, I've been seeing Sanders catching tons and tons and sporting sheepshead.
Sporting his sheepshead.
Sporting them. Not like he'll catch, like, Sanders is a good friend of mine. And for those that don't know, Brian Sanders, I would say he's the top guide in Chuckaluski to take you inshore fishing there in the 10,000 Islands, the west coast of Florida. And, so Brian, he'll only post, he'll post his big snooks, he'll post his tarpon, he'll post his redfish. That's his thing. He catches cobia and permit but I've never really seen him, I know he catches, and a lot of triple tail too, but I know he doesn't really sport those especially sport the sheepshead, but I know he's getting them too, to save face on certain days.
Right.
And man, I'll tell you what, since that meeting, he's
taken a new appreciation of sporting his sheepshead
to a whole new level I've never seen before, and I don't know if I should respect it or not. But Brian, if you're listening, I respect your sheepshead sporting, and I'm looking forward to catching some with you very soon because we got a trip coming up.
And we thank you, Brian, for putting up with Busaka. So we appreciate it.
We do. You're a saint.
Matter of fact, we should reach out to Brian, and you should come back another time, and we'll do a podcast with Brian here.
We'll be able to do that.
He'd be good. He'd be good in here.
Brian will be at the. Brian's actually giving away a trip just like you are at the CCA banquet. So Brian will be at the banquet, and we'll have some of the best anglers in South Florida there, and a couple great guys. Our own Jeff Maggio, he'll be giving away a trip to the CCA to auction off, and Brian Sanders as well. And these are guys that. These are guys, Jeff, you get it. These are guys that support the community and support the organizations that keep them that keep them employed, so to speak, keep the fish in the water and keep our waters as clean as possible. The message,
the philosophy.
Yeah, you gotta give back. You gotta give back.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Now if you guys don't know what the Sail Club was, the Sail Club was a local fishing club. And once a month they would
still
have...
is.
Yeah, still is.
Still is.
But it was a local fishing club here, and you would show up once a month. They'd have an event. They'd have guest speakers. They'd give you fishing tips, do some cool raffles and things like that. And how long were you running the club or president of the club?
4 years.
So you did 4 years as a Sail Club leader, member, president, whatever you want to call it.
I would say my claim to fame would be that I brought the club back and restored it from being dormant and non-existent for, I would say, 10 years, I think was the amount of time. From 99 to 05, that club existed and flourished. And it's funny, we were talking about the swordfish thing earlier. That the club, what really kind of broke the club apart was it becoming a swordfish clique.
Right.
And it was all about swordfish. And the club was hosting the swordfish tournaments. I think we had that 100% payout. That was one, the turtle one. I don't know if you were with them at that one.
I don't know.
But, that was a $30,000 tournament. It was 100% payout, and it was a great turnout. It was 100 boats. It was just amazing. But the club became a swordfish club. And what really was great about the club originally was it was all inclusive. It was the inshore guys. It was the freshwater guys. It was the offshore guys. I mean, we had different speakers, and it didn't matter whether you had... it didn't matter whether you were an inshore guy, offshore guy, freshwater guy, shorebound guy. It didn't matter whether you like snook tarpon or you like dolphin and wahoo. It didn't matter what your income level was and what race you were. It didn't matter. I mean, none of that mattered. It was really just a bunch of real guys that were getting together and having a few drinks, listening and speaking, had a raffle, just having a good time. I mean, this was old school stuff. This was great stuff.
So was it
no cost?
It was an older club, and then you kind of rejuvenated and brought energy there?
So basically, I was part of this Facebook group that was the Sail Club alumni, and people asked, well, you guys are sailing club? And the Sail, SAIL is an acronym for Southern Anglers in Lauderdale. So... we had an alumni group on Facebook, and there was always guys on there, hey, when are we going to get together again? When are we going to get together again? And it was kind of sad because these guys, they could never figure out how to get people together. And so what, I thought to myself, I said, well, I'm getting into my business. It should be a great way to network, be a great way to meet some people. And I said, you know what, let's get everybody back together. So it was easy. I said, all right, we're all going to meet at the Southport Raw Bar, which is where the club originally got together. We're all going to meet there on Thursday, April 2nd, whatever the date was. It was around springtime of 2015. And 13 people showed up, and we said, you know what, this was a great time. I saw friends that I hadn't seen in years, and we said, well, we're going to do this again. So we did it again. We're at the same spot, and we gave away some stuff. And we said, oh, we had 30 people show up. Let's do this again, and let's bring a speaker out.
Right.
So we did it at the Flanagans off of 95 and Davie, and then we brought Ray Rocha, and we're like, we're gonna start this thing off with a bang. We're gonna do this. And one of the best snook fishermen I know, Marsad Qureshi, litigator for those from the forums I know him. He said, Mike, I'll be the vice president. I'll help you get the club started. And then once you get the club started, I'm gonna part ways because I'm a busy guy and I fish all the time, and he owns a business as well. So we got it back together. We had 60-some people show up to Flanagan's to watch Ray Rocher speak, and we just kind of took off from there. And our Facebook group, we made public, and it went from 20 to today is almost 1,000. It would be over 1,000 if it wasn't for Facebook, getting rid of some, people, which obviously fake profiles or whatnot. That's a whole nother conversation. But, and it was a great run. We had meetings, we had outings, we did barbecues and sandbar raft ups and Keys trip we did a couple of Bimini trips to the Bahamas. And man, we had a great time. And I'll tell you that I met some of my best friends through the club. And there was a lot of people that met their best friends and their good friends through the club, and that's what it was all about. There was no entry fees, there was no membership fees. It was just if you wanted to show up and have a good time, and that it was an open door policy. But as quickly as the door opened, it could hit you in the ass on the way out.
Right. Because I didn't really know too much about the Sail Club. I spoke at a lot of the fishing clubs over the years, and then when you got in there, I started hearing about the Sail Club all the time. Then I started attending the meetings, and then we spoke there a couple times. And then when I couldn't make a meeting, I actually was like missing it. Like, man, I wish I could have been at the Sail Club tonight, and I was fishing or whatever.
That's what happens when you have to fish all the time. Yeah,
so somebody's got to do it, and I was chosen, so I'm doing it. But I don't know. I always thought about doing a fishing club. I'm actually thinking about doing one now, a little bit different than what you guys did. But it's hard, man. I was watching, that wasn't an easy thing to do, is to run a club like that. I mean, at all the things that you did, I mean, what was the grind about it? I mean, what was the hardest thing?
It's the most thankless job I think I've ever done in my life, and it's tough. It's tough to get. There's a lot of challenges, so it's tough to get people involved with you that have as much passion as you do and as much time committed. And not to say that I had or have a lot of time, but it was the amount of time that I carved out of my life to commit to this. And when you do that, obviously you're giving up other things. So I had the ability to do that, but to get an organization together, to get leadership involved, to get a board together, and to get those people to have the same motivation and to work as hard as you is impossible, really, because they're not getting paid, and they got jobs, they got families, they got things to do, and that's a big thing. Is unless you're getting, a lot of people's attitudes, unless I'm getting paid, I'm not really going to put in the same effort that I would in my day job because I'm not getting paid. So it's understandable, and
that's human nature. It's human nature.
But I never expected anybody to put in what I did, and I'll tell you what, I was really lucky because I had a good support group around me. I had guys that helped out a lot. I had some guys that stuck with us from the very, very beginning. Brett Sternbach and Steve Perry and guys like that. That really cared a lot, enjoyed what they did, and they wanted to help out as much as they could possibly help out. But like you were saying, there's a lot of challenges because it's a thankless job. You've got people in the background that are saying, sharing their own opinions amongst their own little cliques and their own little groups, and you hear about stuff. You hear about everything because nobody's completely silent. Eventually it gets back to you, and you start hearing about the condescending things that people say and do, and and it just makes you second guess yourself and wonder why am I doing this? What's the benefit to me? Why do I do this? But You do it because we had we had a great following of people. We had great speakers like yourself, Jeff. We had a lot of information shared, a lot of fun times, a lot of friends made. But like I said, none of that came easily.
Right.
And this is my first time, I would say, kind of coming out of my shell and kind of being very truthful and upfront and straightforward about how the whole process was. It was very difficult, and it got more difficult as time went on because I felt that people get bored. They get bored easily. If you're doing the same thing over and over again, you got the same spots, the same places you're having your venue, your meetings at, same types of trips, same things, and our lives have become even more complicated and busy in today's day and age.
Right.
And, it just became really hard to get people to show up and just take the time to come in and show up. And, when you start seeing attendance go down and you're putting equally as much work in and you have to push so hard to get that person in, you start thinking to yourself, you're like, what am I really doing? And is my time really, worth it here?
But, it's common that, and I think this is what was going through your mind, doing the club, is real dudes, guys that are real guys, that fish, that spend their time, energy, and money in order to fish. You want to help the other people, no matter what their situation is. If they're working at Walmart for 40 hours a week or 60 hours a week and they have 10 hours to fish, being a real guy, it's like you want to help all the other real guys. It's like part of being a real guy. So the dynamic between, the thanklessness, but the reward, or the calling, maybe I should say, there's something inside real guys that make you want to help other real guys. And when I went to the club and I watched what was going on, I could see that. You know what I mean? It's like I was like, look, there's Lambrects up there, freaking Spin Freaks over there in the corner, Brett's over there,
Yep.
And I'm like, these dudes actually are trying to help
Yep.
other real dudes
Yep.
do what they want, do what they have passion for, do what
Yep.
they really want to do. And it's in there somewhere in all real dudes that you want to help other real guys. And I think when you guys are doing that club, I mean, to me, that's what stuck out, and it was apparent.
Yeah, it was really a forum basically of free speech, so to speak, and free information sharing. Nobody had secret spots from each other in this group. We had the best speakers, best captains come in South Florida, and we had some amazing meetings. These guys gave away their arsenal of secrets and their tips and all these things. And we'd have our smaller meetings. You'd have a guy like Art Sapp that would tell you all these things about the Bahamas I've never heard of in my life, and I fished my entire life in the Bahamas, and
right.
It was amazing. I've never heard things like that. And like when you have a group like that, you just the free sharing of information is incredible. And and you got, and it really does, I think, speak a lot of volumes for having real guys there, because the guys that were showing up and were taking the time and were taking 2 hours out of their night to show up and support and be with other guys, like themselves, to hang out, have a few beers and enjoy and learn. Those are the real guys. That's what the club was all about. And that's why, I never wanted to instate any kind of membership fees. The club was never like that. The club was as real as it got from its inception back in 1999. And I wanted to keep that same theme going forward. I mean, you can't find any club down here that does what we do, for free, and brings in the talent that we have, and has the close knit group of real guys that we have. So, it isn't. Our club was never the guys running around in their 60-foot Spencers.
Right.
It was never the guys in the mega center consoles with 4 or 5 engines that were fishing tournaments.
It wasn't the yacht club crowd. It was.
Yeah.
And you guys did a great job. It wasn't like the yacht club crowd was excluded. You had a couple of those dudes, or some of those dudes, but then you also had the bridge fishermen,
yeah. And
then you had the inshore guys, and then you had the freshwater dudes, and it was cool. And I always enjoyed it. I just liked it. I liked to know that it was going on. Even when I couldn't participate and stuff, it's like I knew that the club was going on, and people were showing up. Now, was that like a stepping stone to getting to be where you are now as the president? Or explain exactly your position in the CCA now, because I always screw it up. I say chapter, president, county, whatever it is.
You know it pretty well. I mean, you say it right. So my position with the CCA stands for the Coastal Conservation Association. Now, it sounds like a tree-hugging organization when you think about it, and you're like, but I'll tell you what, that's another assembly of real guys, but I'll get to that in a second. But my position with that organization is the Broward County chapter president, and I'm also on the state executive board for the state of Florida for the state chapter, as well as the management committee for the state. And the organization is comprised of a number of different coastal states throughout the nation. It was originally started in Texas, and then from those coastal states, they also have county chapters. Some counties have 2 chapters if they're real big, like Palm Beach has 2 chapters, depending on
And what's your responsibilities as being the county president or chapter president, county chapter president?
My responsibility doing what I do with the organization at the county level is to basically help bring awareness, advocate for the organization at the county level. We have an annual banquet that's coming up May 2nd. That's basically our number one method of raising funds for the state chapter, which, some of those assets come back to our county here. It's really, there's no real specific duty per se other than the banquet,
right?
But if you really want to go out, step outside the box, and you want to make a difference and get a lot of people engaged with the organization at the county level, you'll do things throughout the year. You'll have barbecues, you'll have beach cleanups and things like that. I mean, we had the CCA State, the trash tour. We had that last year when I became president. That was one of the things I wanted to get done right away. I wanted to bring that energy to our chapter, bring it back, because it used to be there and it went away. And I wanted to be the one to bring that energy back, just like what I did with the fishing club, with the sail club.
Okay.
So, we've done that. We had a great banquet last year. We have a really, really solid committee of dedicated committee members on our Broward committee. Our banquet this year has almost already surpassed the amount of seats and tables sold that we had last year, and our banquet's still 3 weeks away.
Very good.
We're due to sell out this year, which is going to be a great accomplishment. I don't want to jinx myself. I want to knock on wood here. This is some real,
Well, dude, you're doing good so far. I mean, it seems like you got some momentum.
We do, yeah. We definitely have a lot of momentum, and like I said, for those of you that know about the organization here, know about it at the state level, know about it at the national level. The organization is really responsible for a number of different things, and that includes habitat restoration, so basically rebuilding grass beds, rebuilding oyster beds, habitat creation, which is sinking wrecks, new oyster beds, new seagrass beds.
Are they doing any of that stuff right here in Fort Lauderdale?
So our chapters always wanted to do an artificial reef. And I heard about this for the last couple of years when I started learning about the CCA. And so when I became president, I said this would be awesome to accomplish. Now, we got it done within the first 10 months of the new committee and my presidency with CCA Broward, which blew, I think, everybody's expectations away. I didn't think that it was even possible to do it in that amount of time, but we were lucky enough to hook up with an organization that I help out called the John Michael Baker Fishing Tournament.
Right.
And that if you want to talk about real guys, that organization was created for a young man who lost his life in a boating accident here in the river in Fort Lauderdale, and he was all about fishing and diving and boating, and so he was about as real as they come, and we need more young people that are real guys like that to take over for the other guys and kind of bring in some youth to the population that we have here of these guys, and gals in Fort Lauderdale. And so the tournament was to benefit the foundation, to give money back to schools for scholarships, but the parents, they wanted to do something more. They wanted to leave a legacy for him, somehow doing something that he loves. So that's how I said, well, the CCA wants a reef. They've got the foundation and the tournament that they've been raising money for, so that would help us with a funding source, and that would also help us as an organization create our artificial reef, and that would help them accomplish their goals to have a legacy for this young man. And so it was a perfect partnership, and we are partnered for the next 4 years, and we have a permit to continue to deploy material in a certain area off of Bird State Park in Broward County, off the beach here, and so we're going to continue to do that.
What were you able to build so far out there?
We sunk 1.2 million pounds of culvert and culvert piping concrete.
Okay.
That was donated to us by U.S. Concrete and also by St. Lucie County. And so it was basically a $50,000 project our first year, and we built an underwater park for divers in 70 feet of water.
Okay. Where
I have video of it already. When I went down our first dive, 4 months after, there was already a family of hogfish on the reef. Already. Yeah. So and there was already live little shells and oysters and things growing on there. And we have a deep site as well. And I think within a week of sinking that, I caught a few bonitas and amberjacks off of that. I mean, it was incredible how quick life showed up on these things. And it kind of just proves to you that what you're doing works. You're creating habitat for fish that are either lost or they're moving, and they find this habitat. And for whatever reason, they're deciding that this is a better area for me to live in than what we had before. So our project, we sunk 1.2 million pounds of concrete in August of last year. We're slated to continue deploying for the next 4 years. That's what our permit is. And Broward County's told us that if we continue this project, that this will be the largest scale artificial reef project in Broward County history.
Very cool. Very cool.
Yeah.
Well, it's good to see you guys, moving at a fast pace like that. Now, if you guys wouldn't mind getting on the Homeland Security and getting them to let us fish in the port again.
What about the water taxis? Are we even allowed to talk about that?
Yeah, of course we can talk about it. It's my podcast. We can talk about anything we want. You're even allowed to curse. If we do curse, I'm going to put explicit when they're in the title. They make you do that. But, the water taxi thing. Do you think the CCA would even consider going up against something like the water taxi?
If the water taxi is hindering the recreational fisherman's opportunity and ability to fish,
which they are,
then I think it's a battle that could be worth fighting.
Dude, it is a battle worth fighting.
I know it is. I've been on the river and I've been on the water here for years, and it's it's amazing to me it's taken this long for somebody to step up and say something with the nonsense that's been going on with these guys.
With the water taxis.
Yeah.
I mean,
you've been patient. I know you've been patient, and for you to finally come out of your shell and.
But I've specifically went out and talked to every law enforcement agency out there and explained the concerns about the water taxi, and I think they have the same concerns, but I just don't think they're willing to, or have been willing to do anything about it. But the thing that speaks for itself is the water taxi problem group on Facebook. We simply started a group on Facebook and called it the Water Taxi Problem, and let people take video and photos of all the violations and all the disrespect.
How many people are on there?
I think we're up around 700 members now.
Wow.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, it's a local...
That speaks volumes,
Right,
Yeah.
700 members.
Yeah.
And now, for the last 3 or 4 months, I haven't even been fishing in Fort Lauderdale. I'm fishing down in Miami most of the time, so I'm not the one getting the footage of the violations and the water taxis, going all over the place. But other people in the group have picked up the slack because there's no shortage of it. And it's funny because when we started that group and it started to get some attention, people were joining and posting and doing this. One of the first persons that called me was the owner of the water taxi.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
Called me right up. We didn't have that group up more than 2 weeks.
Wow.
Dude calls me up on the phone, and the first thing he asked is, dude, what's up with the Facebook page about the water taxis? I go, what do you mean, what's up with it? And he was upset. He wanted me to take it down. And I said, well, the last thing that's going to happen is I'm going to take it down.
Yeah.
I said, I've only had it up a couple of weeks, and here you are calling me on the phone.
Yeah.
So, obviously, it got some attention. I also understand that the law enforcement agencies have looked at the group.
Oh, of course, they're on it.
Yeah, no, they are looking at it and have inquired about it and are talking about it. Personally, I thought they were going to come after me. Oh, let's shut up the guy, dude, that's making all the problems, which wasn't, because it's a group. It's a whole host of people.
It's not their legal right to, so.
Well, what's legal and what's not, it's two different stories, especially here in Fort Lauderdale. But they realized that it wasn't just me. It was a group that was growing, fast. I think if it was just me complaining and hollering and, causing havoc for these people, they probably would have shut me up. But considering it's not just me, it's a whole group of people. It's a community of people. And now maybe even the CCA. And, I don't know. It just seems to me like they should, do what the others do. And I think it's definitely hindering the fishermen. I think a lot of people don't even consider fishing the ICW or the river anymore here in Fort Lauderdale because of the water taxis and the traffic out there. Because it's not just the water taxis, but the water taxis are nonstop from 8 in the morning till 11 o'clock at night, 7 days a week.
I feel like it'd be okay, and it's their right to operate, how as long as they want, as much as they want, as long as they're abiding the laws and the rules of the road, and and being respectful of other boaters and fishermen on the water, and obviously they're not. I mean, if you look at the page, there's so many examples of just blatant disrespect, blatant, just
what taxi stuff,
lawlessness, but like huge wakes. These guys are just hauling. These guys are just hauling down the river, going way faster than anybody else. And there's videos. I think, I don't know, Bill Demler or was it Zach Routman? Zach
had
Routman.
The best one.
Zach had a good one. Zach was basically fully on plane. This guy's passing him like he's standing still.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah. And in a flats boat, so you can plane off full in a flats boat and not create much wake. But you got a water taxi that's passing a planed out flats boat. You can only imagine the amount of wake that this guy's throwing.
But just the philosophy of having water taxis on the waterway makes me sick. Like, even if they paid attention to all the rules and did everything right, there's freaking like 20 of those things out there.
Yeah, they're crazy. I thought they were about to go away at some point. I didn't understand how that could ever be a profitable business. But
I've heard a lot of different things about them not being able to be profitable and getting subsidized and so on and so forth. The only thing that I really know is that they're bigger and there's more of them than there's ever been.
Yep.
And what if you started a company, another water taxi company? Are you allowed to put 30 boats out in the same ICW that those guys did? So then there'd be 60 of them?
Yep.
And then the next guy, and then the next guy. I mean, you just have to use common sense. Like, I cannot understand how the city would let another company disperse 30 boats at one time in a 3-mile radius.
We're talking about a really small area. That's a good point. I mean, it's such a small area. You know how tight the river is here with the bends that we have, and and boaters alone, as it is, they can't properly operate their boats. I mean, you hear about that boat that hit that other boat that hit a dock boat on the river and sunk the boat. Hit and run. These guys can't even drive their boats normally up on the river. And then you got the water taxis adding the complication, and they're not driving right either. So,
dude, the water taxis are paying their captain $16 an hour. Enough said.
Yeah.
$16 an hour.
Yep.
To be on the Intercoastal as a passenger vessel vehicle. That's friggin' shameful. The other thing that's shameful is that, we've let it get to where it is. So if the CCA decided that they were going to go up against the water taxi, I have a group of people that would strongly support you. Already developed, already online.
I see that. I see that.
So, you might want to throw that out there maybe at one of the meetings or whatever.
I think we should talk.
Maybe we can make the water taxis your next artificial reefs.
That would be a great idea.
Get 30 water taxis, piling them up out there.
We'll train them. We can chain them all together.
And even
think about what that would do for our community, as opposed to
right. We get rid of the taxis and get a reef at the same time. Bingo.
Perfect. And look, the owner can write all of these off as a donation. So I think it's a win-win-win. I can't see any downside to this.
There's just no downside.
Yeah.
I wanted to bring up LunkerCon. I think it was 2017, right?
Yes.
That's the one we did together.
Yes.
One of the best LunkerCons we've ever done.
I regret to this day not being able to make 18.
Well, it's over in Tampa. It's 300 miles away.
Well, I can make excuses. I can be flexible with the schedule. It just wasn't able to make that one. But
when we did that LunkerCon, we did it here in Fort Lauderdale at the Downtowner, and Mike was an intricate part of helping me put that thing together. Just like the other lunker cons, it's real guys helping real guys. He actually got the location for me. Got the right lady. What's the lady's name down there?
Oh, her name.
Joyce?
No, not Joyce. You're thinking of Fish Joyce's dock. Maybe that's all.
Oh no. What's the lady's name?
Libby.
Libby.
Yeah.
She was phenomenal.
Yeah.
He hooked me up with this girl Libby, and they put together the venue. Made sure we had enough, space, beers, drinks, and food for everybody. They did a phenomenal job. We had at the time it was record attendance. I think we had about 400 people show up to the thing, wall to wall. And when you went to that LunkerCon and you looked around the downtowner and you saw the amount of great fishermen, not good fishermen, great fishermen that were in that place, I mean, it just filled my heart with pride.
Didn't Carl Ball even show up? I mean,
dude, Carl Ball,
guys coming out of the woodworks,
Sanders, Sapp,
yeah,
Skip Dana, Benny Blanco, Jim Hobalas. I mean, we actually passed around a bucket, a 5-gallon bucket. We had all the great dudes in the place sign it,
yeah.
and then raffled the bucket off.
Yeah.
That's how strong it was.
Yeah.
That's how strong the attendance was. And when you looked around there and you saw all those great fishermen all in one spot, hanging out.
Never happens.
Right.
It'll never happen again.
No, it's going to happen at the next LunkerCon.
Well, it'll happen at the next LunkerCon, but nobody else will assemble a group like that.
It was good, and I want to thank you for helping me put that together.
My pleasure.
Yeah, and we're going to start doing some big triple live events. We're going to go down to that Tarpon River Brewery.
Yeah.
And we're
good people over there too.
Yeah, no, it's a great place to do stuff, and they're gonna designate an area for the audience to sit down. We're gonna do like multiple podcasts so people can actually be there in the audience when we're doing the podcast, and then we'll go live on Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube like we did last year, and that's going to be the evolution of Triple Live. It will be revolved around the podcast recording. That way we can archive it and you guys can listen to it and share it and be part of a different platform than just Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube. So that'll be the next thing. I'm sure we'll have Mike at the next Trip Live event. If nothing else, I'll see him May 2nd at the CCA
banquet.
Yep. Where they'll be giving away. Where I'll be donating a trip for them to give away.
Yep.
And after they give away that trip, then we'll keep on them about the water tax issue here in Broward County, because between that and them shutting down the river where we got no fresh water that pumps in the intercoastal anymore, between the water taxes and that, if we could tackle that, that would be like putting 10 artificial reefs out there.
I don't even think you could quantify what that benefit would be. It's an interesting thing you brought up as well, though, real quick to touch on the water quality issue that we've been having. That's been a big thing that the CCA has been behind to advocate and to lobby our politicians, both not only at the state level but at the federal level, to help us fix this problem. So a lot of people have been, and I want to set the record straight here, a lot of people have been pointing fingers at one direction, either at Big Sugar or they've been pointing fingers at other directions to blame for the algae blooms that we've been having, which have been a crisis and have been national news, and it's not been good for fishing, for tourism, for anything for Florida. And the truth of the matter is that it comes down to nothing more than outdated infrastructure and overpopulation for what the infrastructure is. We cannot move water properly the way that water needs to be moved. There are infrastructure problems north of the lake in Orlando with septic tanks that have been leaking. Most of this issue has been coming from human waste, which has been creating a lot of the nutrient-rich waters, which have been causing the algae bloom. So this is not my opinion. This was communicated to us by a scientist.
Scientific fact.
By a scientist at a board meeting for the CCA for the state, and it was really, really beneficial. And the good news is that there is help on the way. Governor DeSantis has appropriated several $1 billion to get a lot of this stuff fixed and on the way. It's not going to be an immediate fix. It's not an end-all, be-all, but it is a hell of a great start. And we have a lot to be thankful for Governor DeSantis to get to really make this one of the first big items that he had on his agenda, and to get it done. I mean, he promised it, and he's got it done. We've got it started. So be patient.
What has he gotten done so far?
Well, I would say one of the first things, like I just mentioned.
I don't really I know I've heard things, like, okay, DeSantis is in, he's got some things going on, blah blah blah, but
just
I'm fishing every day. I don't
just on this topic, as far as fishing's related. What we needed more than anything was money, and billions of dollars of money, and we needed infrastructure fixed. We needed new septic tanks north of the lake. We needed dikes built. We needed different pieces of infrastructure so we could move water around the way that it needs to be moved. The water needs to go south. It does not need to go east or west. It needs to go south, like it naturally has always gone since the beginning of time. Since the state of Florida ever became a state of Florida, since the state of Florida ever was a natural living resource, the water has gone south, and it needs to continue to go south. So a lot of these problems will help us move that water properly, and secondly, reduce the amount of nitrogen and phosphorus that's in the water, which is causing the algae blooms that we've been seeing, red tide and the algae bloom. So it's like I said, it's not something that's going to happen in a year or 2 years or even 3 years. It's going to be a process, but there are measures now that are in place that are being taken, and like I said, it was billions of dollars, and it wasn't big sugar, and it wasn't anything else. It was to fix the things that actually needed to be fixed. So that's happening. So it's going to be a process.
I think people are quick to point their finger, because
human nature. It's human nature.
Exactly.
That's okay.
They're quick to point their finger. I keep hearing about big business, big sugar. They're like, dude, those guys have been doing the sugar thing out there for 100 years.
It's easy to point the finger at the money. It's really easy to point the finger. It's all about money. It's all it's all motivated by by the Washingtons, right? But
I'm going to go the opposite direction. I'm pointing my finger at government.
Yeah.
Because government is the one that let Broward County become overdeveloped.
Yep.
Government
still are. They still are.
Right. Government is the one that said, okay, we can build 595 and kill the New River. Government is the one that puts the fence up between Broward County and Naples so nobody can access the water. The government is the one that built the 595 to go all the way across Alligator Alley and stop the flow of the water. And I got news for everybody out there. It's organizations like the CCA. It's real guys that are going to actually make a difference in the environment and in the water quality. It's not going to be the government. The only time the government's going to get involved is when we scream loud enough and when we put enough dollars behind our philosophy and our message. Then we will get a reaction from the government. But you fools that are out there that think that the government is there for you, you are sadly mistaken. So step up, join the CCA, be a real guy. And Mike, thanks for coming in. Thanks for doing the podcast. And thanks. Hopefully this will entertain the Real Guy Network for an hour and 2 minutes and 52 seconds. We appreciate you coming in, and we hope this isn't the last time.
It won't be. Thanks for having me.
Nice. Run that dog. Thanks so much, Mike.